Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to April's first edition of Azureish Live. Joining me today is only one of the two people that we would normally on the show. We have Jonathan Rolfe.
Hello.
And the spirit of Pete Gallagher, as he is otherwise engaged today. But the show must go on, and
We're kind of on a feature branch.
yeah.
We'll pull request and get him back to Maine soon.
Yeah, so he should be back. I get in time for the next show. I know we've also had a week or so of less shows, just in general, because things have just been incredibly busy.
Yes, they have.
Which is good. It's a good sign of everything with how things are going for us as well. But today we're going to crack on with our zero touch CI/CD pipeline in Azure DevOps, following that everything as code approach. Now it's been a little while since we've taken a look at this, so we're going to go through. We'll do a quick recap of where we're at, and then we'll start looking at the next pieces. I think one of those next pieces we were starting to look at the front end service. I think was where we're up to.
Yeah.
So we're going to look at doing the Blazor piece, especially with it being static content and everything else, into a storage account. But let's just go into here. Now, if we have problems with the Azure subscription this time, we might not be able to fix it because it's Pete's.
Because our admin's away.
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's hope not.
So where did we get to? So let's look at our pipelines. Yeah, there we go. Oh, look, there's that bodes well for today's show.
Well, I think you'll find that it's the Mac. I think it's usually Mac build agents that have got a lengthy.
Oh yeah, we're not using that.
There we
so
go.
Okay.
It's just a lengthy thing that they've got going on in the background.
Yeah. Cool. Hi, Rick, in the chat. How's it going? So what we're going to do is take a look at this front end CI. We're already deploying the Git Watcher API. And as a reminder for everybody too, where I can move let me move my headset. I don't know why it's even there. Is if you want to follow along at home too, you can go to the link that should be somewhere above my head any second now. And you'll see all our repositories there. So there'll be a Git Watcher repository. You can also contribute to the repos as we go too, or fork them for your own devices and do what you need to later. So let's look at this front end CI side of things. So we already set up our sort of prep step, and we started to get into dev. But we left it last time at a 400 error code in our ARM template. So let's take a quick look at what's going on there. That isn't very helpful.
Could it be the old naming of the resource group like we had problems with last time?
Well, it should. I mean, this
follow
should
line 10 and
exist.
say check if it exists, because we had that location shortcode problem in the previous episode.
We did, yeah. Let me just make sure. Let's have a look. AZL TF state shared UK West -RG AZL. Let me just bring this over here as well so everybody can see what I'm looking at. So that exists. That exists.
Yep.
So what's the problem? Tell you what, first things first.
Subscription. Oh,
I'm going to do that. Yeah. Just going to give it another crack to see what happens. Every episode of Azureish Live is troubleshooting live, Louise. That's
the whole point of the show.
That's what we do.
These things don't just work on video demos.
Yep.
Although I have found that certainly when I've been doing code demos in my own presentations, that I do find that fast forwarding the boring bits does mean that you get to the actual.
Oh, I am supposed to be sharing my screen. You're very right, Louise.
Oh yeah.
I moved everything, but I didn't press the button. So, I've actually had my Stream Deck unplugged for like the last week or so, just because I've been doing stuff with my desk and everything. So it's weird that like prior to that I'd gotten really used to using it for lots of stuff.
Yeah.
Except now I've not been using it for a bit. Getting used to it again is strange.
I'm going to not look at the preview because Pete's profile image is just judging me at the moment. It's like he's looking into my soul, trying to work out where
It's the only picture
this
of
is
Pete
going
I've
to
got.
build. Yeah, that's fair. It's a good one, but it just looks like he's going, have you built that yet? So the build job's going well.
Yeah. In fact, whilst we're at it, whilst we're waiting for this to run through, it's worth noting that Pete and I are one on Thursday night speaking at the Welsh Azure user group, and we're going to be doing our talk on remotely controlled robot arms through remotely controlled robots through Azure, where there'll be a robot arm you can interact with as well.
Nice.
We're doing the same talk as well at I think 1 p.m. GMT, which would be 1 p.m. summertime.
Yeah.
But I'll confirm that for Global Azure, and we'll be doing that, to the world. So if you want to come and watch that, we're actually going to be doing it here on our channel as well.
Nice.
So you'll just have to come to twitch.tv/Azureish live, and you'll be able to see that. You'll be able to interact with the robot as well. And we'll talk about unmanned aerial vehicles, bomb disposal robots, remote control cars, remote control surgery. And then in the evening, I'm also doing a talk on for Global Azure again, all around Azure DevOps for container security in your pipelines. So we'll be doing that too. And that's next week on Thursday and Friday overall. But we'll put some tweets out with all the information in. So that's a 400 error, which is a bad request. So we can't get the status of the resource group.
Smells like subscription problems again.
It does, doesn't it? So let's head back, because I can see the resource group.
So you can. It's just whatever service connection that this project is using might not be able to see it.
Do edit pipeline. I think we're just doing it by name, aren't we? So get watcher. Oh no, we have subscription ID. That could be the problem, that we haven't set the subscription ID as a variable.
Let's have a look. Yeah, because we claimed this. We create this new pipeline last week, last episode.
We do, and it is a secret. So let's see if I can find it in Slack.
So yeah, so this for me is where I'm probably misusing Key Vault secrets, but I have in the past used a Key Vault secret to store secrets rather than pipeline variables.
Don't you need to know, like in this secret, you'd need to know, surely you need to know the subscription ID anyway?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, in that context, that's not going to change. But for me, the subscription ID is kind of built into the connection. I don't know if we need to actually specify it.
There was a reason that we had to, and I don't fully recall why. But like, I think it's just because this task demands it. So even though we've got the resource manager connection, it still wants a subscription ID regardless.
Yeah.
So where are my Azureish live? Oh, I'm looking at the organization for the team project. That's why.
I do find the documentation for these tasks, and certainly the GitHub repository that they live in, is very handy. I've props to Microsoft's teams working on this area, that they do tell you which of these parameters are default or or what the overloads are. There, it's pretty clear documentation of.
I just need to make sure I'm looking at the right thing.
Yeah, that's all right. No worries.
Because so I don't have it on the screen, just in case there's any secrets that pop up and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do this over here briefly. I think it's the right one.
Nothing in the hat. Look into the hat.
At the same at the same time, because we use an extension called AZ Mask, so you'll see that like this subscription ID here is blurred out, whereas in the portal you'd see it otherwise. And we're just sort of playing it safe. You can still copy and paste that value
because that, as much as that extension's really good, I think there are times where potentially the portal may be ahead of where that extension is. So we just err on the side of caution. Right then, you click the button again.
I've clicked the button again.
Good.
So we'll see what happens. We shall see what happens.
I find it interesting that even though you've got the job pending and then you do get allocated a build agent, I do find it interesting that each job seems to have a different build agent allocated to it. Certainly in the way that we host it, in the sense that you can. I'm surprised they don't just leave the allocation for the whole job rather than reallocate you per step.
Well, I guess that's how the whole queuing thing works, right? So you're paying for concurrent jobs rather than pipelines.
Okay, yeah, fair point. And also, it means that if somebody had a ridiculously long pipeline, you're not clogging up everything for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's just sometimes when you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs, you're like, you've just given me a build agent. Don't let it go.
Yes.
I'll have that one again.
Hopefully, this will solve the issue. Well, thankfully, it happens fairly early on, so we'll see.
Yes, exactly. And again, this is one of those things that you can't shortcut, because it's not like you can test it on your own machine first, because it's the build agent doing it on your behalf. I found the same thing with managed identity. So recently I've been switching to using default managed identity for some stuff in Azure Function Apps. And on your local machine, there's a hierarchy. It will go for things in your environment, and then if
that's looking a lot happier.
It is, isn't it? If there's nothing in your environment, it's got a hierarchy of places to look.
Yeah,
a bit like the similar sort of thing when DLL linking happens in Visual Studio. It'll look in the GAC and it'll look in all those other places if it's not obvious locally to the project. And yeah, so again, that was a classic case of works on my machine, that the default managed identity was working fine with the My Local Storage Explorer because everything was there available. And it was only when I pushed it for the main branch and actually got the build agent to build it that something other than my machine building it highlighted a problem that I'd created with one of the options in the default managed identity was to exclude something that Azure was going to implement. And I was like, oh, I've just effectively nobbled it. So yeah, sometimes with cloud, you have to push it so it's not on my machine. Right, what we got now?
So I think the name of the resource group might be wrong in the out. So we basically added the stage for dev, copying and pasting, and then didn't really do much else.
No, we didn't.
With it. So there you go. There's our variables. So that needs to be West.
EKW. Or we could have that as concatenated, and then we don't have typos.
We do. Well, I figured one of the things that was worth doing is leaving some things in to go back to. So
yeah, absolutely.
For the context of the show.
Yeah, because otherwise we just sort of magic happens between episodes. Yeah, I get that.
So what we've got is all our stage is doing right now is we're going to get it to set up the Terraform. We'll go into deploying into a storage account shortly for the static sites. Just as a quick reminder, let me go into check out Azureish. Get Watcher. There we go. That's what we wanted. And I'll make that a little bit bigger as well, so you can actually see what we're doing from point of view of what our Terraform is doing. So just as a reminder, what we're actually hosting in is just a straight up Azure storage account with static sites turned on. And that is it. And all we need to do that, to enable it on a storage account, is have this static website block and specify an index document. And that index document will get created with our Blazor WebAssembly app as well. So we're not using any hosted versions of .NET here or anything like that. It's just pure WebAssembly. So we don't need the backend server.
Mhm.
So now that is done, I'm going to hit save. And it should actually be our first commit of the show. So the current Git watcher should actually go and update the bottom of the screen that you're watching now. If we go to our pipelines, what we don't have right now is a trigger on that particular folder. So we're going to go and do that. A manual run for now. Yes, we did look at static web apps to start with, Rick. But when we started the original project for this and wrote it all, static web apps didn't exist. So that was pre-Christmas. So we built Git Watcher out on the show, October, November time, I think, didn't we, Jonathan?
Yes. Yeah, it was before the Advent. It was before the Advent calendar that we were involved in.
Yes, yeah. So one of the things we're looking to do in the future is then migrate it to things like the Git Watcher to .NET 5, through to and then looking at putting it on the static web apps side of things to see what happens.
Yeah, I'm very interested in the .NET 5 migration because it's something that I need to do with some of my personal projects as well. So that's a journey I've yet to try and understand the differences. I don't think for the stuff that we're doing it will make much difference because it's a hosting model that would be absolutely fine. But this,
well, exactly. But I mean, I think the context of doing it, because at the end of the day, we're now on an LTS release. There's a good chance that .NET 6 will be out before we move it to .NET 5.
Yeah, they are moving at a pace, and I think also there
Yeah.
was that. I don't know if we pasted that into the last episode's Twitch chat, but there's a great graph of an image of the support for, I think it was for .NET 5 and functions that eventually the 6 and beyond roadmap effectively takes over this kind of worker process thing that they've come up with for the moment, I believe.
And that's the other bit as well, isn't it? Because so .NET 5 is what's the proper term for it? It's not an interim release as such, but it's not an LTS one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've got to a point now where there's enough trust that I wouldn't be wary of switching to .NET 5. I think that there's not much reason to stick to 4.5. But again, you're back to use case. If you're just doing it because it's what the Azure CLI or whatever you're using defaults when you do a .NET create, then fair enough. But you need to understand. I mean, certainly we found that around the episode that we did around .NET 5 release date, some of the NuGet behavior was changing to actually start to pull in .NET 5 packages because they were the latest in NuGet. And so in some respects, you've got to be mindful of either you need to go through and explicitly pin everything to 4.5 if you want long-term service, or go with the flow and just accept that you're on that journey because NuGet and things that your project might be pulling in without you realizing and specifically naming it at an earlier version. So yeah, it's a good reminder that you need to be explicit if you do need to be explicit. Ooh, with that warning. Resource already exists. Ooh. We're trying to create in the Terraform apply. Have we managed to not have a state that exists already? So is our
Potentially,
state
yeah. So let's take a quick look in Azure. So Rick in the chat as well, I believe he is going to be the first guest on a new show that we have joining us. So you'll have seen probably over the weekend, and if not this morning, that Mert Yurta is going to be joining the Azureish Live family, and he's going to be bringing a whole new show to us as well called Mert to the Future, where he's going to be taking a look at things like the real cutting edge bits and pieces of Azure and starting to do demos around that too. And he's going to get guests on, such as Rick as well. And it's going to be pretty great stuff. Rick, can you remind us in the chat what you're going to be discussing on Thursday with Mert?
Apart from the fact that he says he's prepared for some debugging, I'm not sure what else. Yeah, clearly knows what we're like on this channel.
These all exist.
But I think it was complaining that the resource group existed already, wasn't it? I think it was almost complaining that we'd already got something with that name, and
Which is true because we set it up with the other one. So how do we solve that?
Delete it.
Well, this is but this is our back end, right? That we set up before.
Oh, okay.
So
is this the crossing of the streams of two terraforms?
This is the Terraform. Yeah, group? You're right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Rick says he's going to be talking all about Azure functions.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
So we want to do. It needs to be imported into the state. So let's take a look at that. Do a quick Google of that. Import source group.
Can be imported using the resource ID. There's definitely somewhere in here that
As a resource group. Import.
Yeah. Terraform import. And is that your Terraform file? And then the /subscription GUID /resource group /name.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Let's copy that
off screen if you're trying to avoid the subscription ID.
I don't. Is it just a run once operation, or is it something that we need to do each time?
I'm presuming it's a run once, because then surely it would go into, as long as you're then pushing the state to the cloud state storage.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. If do we run it just as part of one of our steps here instead?
You could do, but then it kind of feels like once it's done once, it's kind of a thing that we need to run once against that external storage, don't we? And then it should be ready, rather than us having to do it every time. I mean, it would belt and braces. It would work, I'm guessing.
Possibly. Let me just see if we actually have Terraform installed.
I'm guessing it's a.
I'm not going to install it locally anyway. What we do have though is probably Cloud Shell.
Yeah. Okay. Have you got? Well, was that terminal that you got open anyway? You could just open a new tab with Cloud Shell.
You've turned into Rainbow Vomit, by the way, Jonathan.
Oh, let me turn my camera off and on again. Thank you for the heads up. Sometimes it does this. I need to change the codec on. Wait for my rainbow going. Go away. There we go. Right, coming back. Hopefully. Turn it off and on again. There we go. Magic. Yeah, so Cloud Shell requires a
storage account.
Storage account to talk to. So I mean, the alternative is to just put it in as a CLI step in the pipeline, as you say. But I just think it may be possible to do it just once and then delete the step.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I'm
more familiar with. Ye olde Terraform than I am.
Well, it's whether or not if we can run it multiple times and not have too much impact, then
yeah. I mean, if it doesn't take,
I would put it in all the time. But I guess we don't know. But we can find that out.
No, we don't know. I have a suspicion because Terraform state is so important. I have a suspicion that once it's been written to state, it would be fine.
I'm saying our resource group is called somewhere.
It's the first resource, isn't it? Okay.
I like how this UI
that's
doesn't
really
scroll.
good, isn't it? Oh,
yeah. Doesn't actually let me do anything. Cool. So on that one. So, like I say, we'll just quickly do this off screen just in case of any secrets that will be there. Actually, I think let's just quickly just double check this because something's not sitting right in my head at the moment around this.
Spidey senses going on here.
Yeah. Terraform inits, Terraform plan. So let's do just here. Terraform form. So there isn't an import command there to run, but I guess we can still.
I'd copy that across, and you could override that. I'm guessing if it's just plumbing it
I'm
into.
wondering if it still needs the back end. Well, it should do.
Yeah, you would hope. You would think so, wouldn't you? Because it would need to store it in the back end.
And give this a go and just sort of see what happens. Import. Okay. It's not valid.
Okay. So presuming that if the Terraform agent is installed in the build agent by this point, we might be able to just do a CLI.
That was the other thing I was thinking. Yeah. So we can do. Let's get back. Yep, that.
Yeah, it was interesting with us talking about last time with out variables that, if you remember, I was saying that my take on that had been to use a snippet of PowerShell to grab those. So I'm sure that will get easier over time. That parsing ARM template variables.
I'm going to save it and see what happens. It's my.
Yep.
It's my.
Yep. Good idea.
This is the other 50% of the show. It's just sort of doing it and seeing what happens.
Yep. Well, that's the way we learn.
So we saved that.
Yep.
Did I run it? No, I didn't. So let's run that.
Run the main.
We just need to get down to dev to see that happen.
Yep. Anything else new tech-wise you've been playing with since the last episode?
Actually, yeah, well, kind of, but not really Azure related as such. I've been fiddling about with Unity a little bit.
Oh yeah, it's good fun.
Making basically a lot of our shows are all that same sort of synth wave or retro wave look. So I want to try and make a bit of a racing game around it, and it seems to work. What I've done so far. There's a course, there's a car that you can drive around. It makes noises. It's all 3D. It looks the part, I guess, in terms of that retro wave aesthetic. But yeah, it's been an interesting learning experience. Just for the sheer amount that you have to code. And to be honest, I've taken a lot of pre-made assets and sort of wired them all together instead.
Yep.
But there's a lot involved.
Yeah, I've always wondered. I mean, it's a similar leap from manual cars to driverless cars. I've always wondered if there's a Unity option for monitoring and visualization of metrics that, the three-dimensional aspect of things to actually say a volume of messages on a queue could be visually represented in 3D rather than just graphs and gauges. But yeah, I'd have to get used to Unity. But it does sound. I've picked it up in the past and tried the basic tutorials and stuff and gone, yeah, okay, this is. I mean, it kind of takes me back to a bit like, well, Blender equivalent, but at least it's C# and at least you can code with it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So I've probably got it to hand. I don't have it to hand. Okay. Oh no, there's this that was a pre-made thing that I've gone and edited a little bit more.
Yeah.
Which is all just this is to do with having the right camera behind the car, so it's all rear view.
Yeah, back in the day, I mean, really going back in the day, I mean, I remember with my brother learning, he was very much into a program called Povray, which was, I think, is still around, but not really. And that was where you would define it in a language and then just wait for a single frame to render. persistence of vision ray tracer, and it was if you made a mistake of that, the fact that it was a bit like waiting for dial-up internet. It was you had to wait 3 minutes for the scene to render, and then you realize you'd made a mistake with one of your objects.
Yeah. So that failed.
Oh dear.
And that failed because we didn't specify, I think, because we didn't tell it where it needs to run.
Okay, but we got through to dev at least.
We did. So we've got that. Settings, advanced working directory. It's going to be...
Okay.
Well, that's
good formatting, that.
arse.
Yeah, that's...
Save. Run. But yeah, I mean that's largely been my tech piece recently. Other than that, really,
just out of
I've
interest,
actually taken a bit of a break of doing things all the time.
If we went back to a previous pipeline run, can't you just does it use the current pipeline definition if you were to say rerun dev?
No. So it will take a snapshot of the definition at the time it was run, and if you rerun it, it will still use that same snapshot.
Ooh, how very intelligent of it.
And kind of go from there, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, how about you?
How about me? I've been doing a bit more with, as I say, with a bit more with Azure Functions, and as I've already done my little anecdote about default managed identity, which was which what's kind of has been consuming me a little bit for the small bit of coding I have been able to do since last time we did an episode.
Yes,
It's been more non-technical than technical meetings and stuff since then. But yeah, there's some interesting. I think the thing at the moment is that there are so many things that have the Azure name on them that trying to keep up with. I mean, certainly my RSS feed of Azure updates, you could spend an hour reading that a day just to try and keep it with what's happening in Azure at the moment. So in some respects, I think that whole .NET 5 thing is that you have to have a pragmatic need. If there's a genuine benefit of switching over to .NET 5 beyond learning, I mean, for us, we'll do it in a future episode because we want to learn about it.
Yeah.
But also from a project point of view, then there's always that temptation, certainly with my attitude towards wanting to try the latest thing, that you've got to take a step back and go, okay, does this actually add value? And in some respects it does, because you're switching onto a tool set that's more actively being developed. On other sides, you might actually be introducing churn where it's not actually adding business value or add value to your own project.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the thing. Like, depending on how quickly things move along, like we were saying earlier, .NET 5 isn't an LTS release, from folks that I've worked with. You know, they'd be very resistant to moving to that because it's not a long-term support release.
I did a talk at Elastic User Group in London years ago, and the other people talking there were ASOS, the clothing
Oh,
retailer,
yes.
and they were talking about their big deployment of Elastic Stack, and they were still, I mean, certainly part of the talk was they were still on the very first abstraction at the time of Azure VMs, and they hadn't had the bandwidth to move on to even the deployment model. You know, we'd moved across to ARM from, I can't remember the acronym.
Classic resource manager.
And they were still deploying things using, I mean, thankfully Microsoft was still backwards compatible in that sense, but they were just, part of the talk was, we spent time building this, and therefore it works, and therefore if it continues to work, do we really need to be switching over? And so it was interesting to have that sort of thought about, do you really want to be spending 20-30% of your time always keeping up? But obviously the risk, if you don't, is that backwards compatible support could fall off the end of the roadmap, and then you'd be left without your solution.
Yeah. I think that's
And
an
also the
interesting one.
and also the can you make sure, are you definitely aware of all the changes that are happening in things that you are using from a third party, be that Microsoft, be that NuGet libraries? Because if you're dependent on it,
So he's nudging the microphone.
if you're dependent on it, you need to know what's changing, because you need to be aware that these things may be going end of life. And if you're just blindly assuming that that thing will be always available, you can't do that in cloud. You can't do
No.
that with stuff. Right, what we got now? It's
So
work,
it's something's happening.
but it's
It's not failed.
sending. It's not failed, but it's also not returned to move on to the next step.
Yes. So I'm going to
So
very quickly just make sure I have Terraform installed, which I think is available on.
well, I'm not up to a build where Wing gets available yet.
Uh,
I'm not on an insider's build.
I think it's now just part of
Was it?
the real deal.
I've not tried recently. To be fair, I was always assuming that I'm not that I use Chocolatey a lot, but I've always.
I'm pretty sure there's a site, isn't it? Is it Winstall?
Is it still a Microsoft Store app, or is it? No, that was just if you wanted to optionally install it, wasn't it?
Yeah. So Terraform isn't on there, but it probably is on Chocolatey.
It will definitely be on there.
Matey, you're making life difficult.
Hey, there we go. Good old Choco. I think I've on a previous episode already talked about there's a build back in the day when I was playing with Terraform, not Terraform. It's because I've got HashiCorp on the brain. Packer. There was a great blog that I found back in the day that was a guy who had. Someone had created a script that uses Chocolatey for creating patchable Windows ISOs, and so you would create a build pipeline that actually produced at the end of it a Packer ISO of Windows that had been patched and had the features that you wanted on it using Chocolatey. And I thought one of the most interesting hacks that I saw of Packer was that clearly Windows updates require multiple reboots, and so what I found so clever, he was using a floppy drive emulator. I can't believe that we're still in the point where Windows, you can still provide boot up options on the A drive. And there was a program called Boxstarter that allowed you to do floppy drive emulation for quick answer files for Windows install. But what they'd done was that there was a non-standard, I think it might have been even the Telnet port, but the script finally, once you'd done all the Windows updates and rebooted multiple times, it finally opened the Telnet port, and then Packer itself was just sitting externally, twiddling its thumbs, constantly polling for whether that port was open. And when that port was opened, then Packer went, all right, you must be done. And it shut down the VM and it packaged it up. And I was like, oh, that's such a clever little hack to get Packer to just sit back and not do anything, even if the VM was power cycling itself.
Nice.
So yeah, anyway,
So I'm.
I know
It's still running, which makes you think it's probably waiting for a prompt of some description.
Yeah, I suspect that it's probably
So,
out for something. Great. So we need to try. Are we going to try that command locally then, seeing what happens?
I am. I'm just logging into Azure. Essentially.
Yeah. Don't blame you. It's. I suppose the other alternative would be to have created a separate resource group for the front end and a separate resource group for the back end. And then they would be
we could do
unique.
that.
They would be unique names.
That would be why. Yeah, I mean that's why that's kind of why what I would do normally.
Because then at least there's that separation of. If one was to run first, would the other one then have the problem? If we deployed front end, back end would then have a problem because back end would go, but that resource group already exists. It's not in my Terraform state file. So I think in some respects, separate resource groups might be an easy way around this problem.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of where I'm getting to, is it? Because if this doesn't work.
If this doesn't work quickly, we should go for plan B.
And for something. Where did I just open this from? That's the real question.
I thought you said chocolatey, wasn't it? Oh,
No, I'm just trying to change.
all
Oh,
right.
I've
So
got
you mean on your
something.
local
Yeah.
machine?
Yeah. I have a few different Azure folders.
Yep. No surprise.
And let's try that. Okay. Oh, okay. Terraform. Init. Backend container name. We'll take. In fact, I'll show this bit on the screen with what I'm doing so far. So it does want me to do things locally.
Aha.
I'm going to cancel this job because it's clearly not doing anything.
Yep. It's definitely not.
I'll do a quick edit of the pipeline as well. And we have our Terraform init further down.
There it is.
And what we're asking for is, close that, the container name. The container name
Is a variable.
is variable called TF state.
Yep.
Bob key is dev client. Ooh. Storage account is called Blair.
Blip, 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 blip. Ooh.
Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to put it in a different resource group.
There we go. Let's just sidestep that one.
So we're doing that. We've got the init. Take this out.
Yep. That'll speed
And
that
we'll
up.
figure that out another time. Terraform plan. So it's not just the Terraform that we need. Sorry, it's not just this we need to save, but we need to change our Terraform.
Yep.
So I'm going to open up here. And we have, actually, do we need to do it here? Did we not set it in here somewhere? Product code, Git watcher, FE, the front end. Because I don't think we need much else. No, we will do, because the we're going to be doing a storage account.
Yeah.
Which will use that name. So let's save that again, and we'll just run it through. Which I could have done from there, so I don't know why I came here.
For the Twitch viewers, I will post that. There's a link to that creating Windows-based images for VirtualBox and Hyper-V using Packer, Boxstarter, and Vagrant in chat. As I say, it's a bit old now, but I mean, when was it written? 2015, but it was an interesting proof of concept at the time, certainly if you were still working with virtual machines and base images that you were creating yourselves.
Actually, a lot of this one-handed because the cat is
Demanding
asleep
attention.
on me.
Yeah.
On my other arm. He's quite heavy. It's making it go dead.
Yep. Cats have staff. So I think this .NET Publish is actually the 40-odd second mark because it's actually doing the...
It's converting it down to WebAssembly, isn't it? As well?
Exactly, getting rid of all the PDBs.
I mean, this is just going back to the .NET, not LTS releases. So you can see there that there's an info thing at the top where the runtimes for 2.2 and 3.0 have been removed from all the agents, which the same will happen with 5 because it's not one of those long-term support releases. think you're right. I think, Jonathan, there's a whole page about what's
Yeah,
supported until when, and
I've just posted. I've just managed to close the Twitch tab. Let me just reopen that. I'm going to post that exact blog post from last month. That's about .NET 5 and .NET on Azure Functions roadmap, which is interesting because there is that graph of. I don't know if you can get that up. Have you got the Twitch while we're waiting for that to go? Have you got the?
I have, yes. Sorry.
There's a great graphic, the feature of .NET on Azure Functions. If you just scroll down, it looks like a London Underground map.
That one.
Yeah, there we go. And so at the moment, the isolated process is what we're switching from. What we're switching over to in .NET 5's available. And then, as you said, when .NET 6 long-term service comes out, then both will be available. And I think that's because durable functions are going to take some time to move across, which, according to that, will be .NET 7 before durable functions are ported. So for those people that rely,
Is it? Because isn't that November for in processing with durable functions?
yeah, but if you see the isolated process on top, which is where eventually we're switching
Yes.
over to, that inner circle switches up to the top line only in .NET 7. So durable functions are available in process already.
So it looks like everything's intended to move over to isolated processes.
Yeah, because when you look at the hosting model that they've got, I think it's basically allowing them to switch out. I mean, this is me not reading too much into it, but it kind of feels like they're abandoning the IIS kind of back end.
Yeah.
I think that's that. My layman's understanding is it feels like in process is more you're on a hosted. Rick says all other languages already use the isolated process anyway. So
didn't know that. That's interesting.
I'm sure we'll learn more on Thursday anyway.
Yeah, I don't want to do all the spoilers for
Yeah,
Rick's
I know.
guest
I'm
spot.
probably talking about stuff but it'd be good to get Rick's view on everything anyway because everyone's experience is different. Oh, Terraform plans failed.
Yeah, now the name is too long.
What? Oh, storage accounts. How they vex the. It's the one.
Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to make it really, really short by
it's the one
scrolling all the way down.
So picky.
Sorry, not all the way down to there. We want that. And I'm going to change this to
GW.
GW. Yeah. GWFE. Pete's going to come back from what he's doing. And he's like, what's Gwither?
Yeah. Why have you named all these variables Z, X, and Y? It's like, yeah. It's interesting that naming, especially when there's always been that debate in programming about why use short names when it's effectively it's getting compiled down to bitcode anyway, so therefore you're not really saving yourself any bother, but at least there are some long like for loops always being I is the variable name. There's certain conventions that people tolerate even though they're saying it should be explicit. Your variable name should be self-documenting effectively. But in this case, storage account name, resource names having a ridiculously short, is it 12 characters or something? And it's just like, in this case, Pete's going to have to learn that GWFE is get watch your front end.
Right, so this is still going. And we'll let that run.
Yes, indeed. Just trying to see if there's anything on HashiCorp about what's coming next in Terraform, but I am not up to date with what they're doing at the moment. If there's anything majorly exciting coming out on that. Only because I was spotting that some of the warning messages that we were getting were to do with it might be the module that we're using with Azure RM, but there was something that was saying that we could do with a newer version or something. But that's not a blocker at the moment, so we'll just get the thing working to begin with. Cool. Right, build's done.
Yeah, prereqs
for
the storage account.
Yay. Cool. And then we just need a build agent for dev.
And whilst we're kind of waiting for this, it's worth reminding folks that if you've got Amazon Prime and you follow us on Twitch and you aren't already using your Twitch Prime benefit, feel free to subscribe to us with that, as it doesn't cost you anything extra, and it lets us fund all our various endeavors.
Indeed.
That's better.
You can try and take Johnny Chips's #1 spot off for cheering.
Yes.
Cool. Right, Terraform Planet is chugging away and has passed. And now we get to the important apply. Creating the resource group. Creating the storage, so it's not balked out yet.
Yeah. We should be able to get this deployed just ahead.
That's satisfying. Oh, look, Johnny's defending his crown. VIP indeed.
John, what's on your show this week?
Yes,
that has failed.
Who's in convo this week with Mr. Chips? We should wait for the power of text-based communication via the Twitch chat stream.
So, failure responding to request. We can't set a thing, a resource lock. So why do we have a resource lock? We have a resource lock for reasons that we don't need right now. So I'm just going to quickly.
So in conversation with Johnny Chips this Friday at 6:30 BST, I assume, Mr. Chips, with Sarah Lean this week.
Thank you for the bits, Rick.
Oh, very nice. Extra salt.
Right. There is the thing. So add.
Oh, Ricky's taken #1 spot. Boom.
Oh no.
Cool. Right, let's go back to main.
No, that's the whiteboard. You don't need that because we're not writing on it today.
It's very, very white.
It's very white. We can see that that's gone up as well, but we've not set any any
criteria,
path-based filters for the infrastructure folder at the moment. We will run that. There we go. What are you chatting to Sarah about, John?
Well, we're waiting for that. I think the one thing about investing in your project to be like deployed like this is one of those things. Like some people say, well, it's so easy with VS Code and stuff now to just push. But as soon as you start working with other people, or as soon as you've stepped away from your project, you will forget these things. And it's fine to argue these things when you are in deving things on your own and trying things out. But as soon as you collaborate, or as soon as you, as I say, move on and forget what resources are needed to deploy a project, it's infrastructure as code is just so important for self-documentation. And also the other thing that I've found from having done the ops bit of my DevOps experience is just that. How long was it since you last deployed something? And if you haven't got a repeatable process, then your project is at risk of becoming stale, not least the tooling moving on, not least the infrastructure that builds it moving on. That you do need to go this is pain. It may feel like for the last 3 episodes we've been going through teething problems, but these are teething problems that result in a reliable process. And effectively we have only spent 2
hours.
2 hours effectively. It just seems to a long time because we spend a fortnight between each episode. So it's good to do this kind of stuff, and I'm sure a lot of our watchers do anyway, but it's good to remind people that if they're new to CI/CD, or if they're new to DevOps, Azure DevOps, it's definitely something to play with, because you will thank your future self will thank you now.
And exactly, and where we're trying to get to with this is being able to eventually, when we get around to writing a bunch of unit tests as well,
Yes.
and a few other bits and pieces that we want to bake into our pipeline later, is this whole thing should become zero touch, and as part of that, that would mean we can push different push changes to things and have it vulnerability scanned, have it hit a bunch of gates on the way out, so that we aren't just putting our show at risk effectively.
Yeah. And it allows us to innovate faster. Is if we come up with a new idea for Git Watcher, we can just do it and push, and it will then be available on the next stream.
Exactly. Now,
Mr. Lund
wrap plan.
says Sarah Lee will be talking with him about certification, community, and what it's like to be a cloud advocate, which is very exciting. So that's again Friday at 6:30 on this channel.
There we go. Terraform Apply has run.
All the C's indeed, Louise. Certification, community, and cloud advocacy.
Now let's refresh this. There it is. There's our storage account.
Whee.
Now, there's nothing in it at the moment, but we are, in fact, at more or less at the end of the show today, because we do have successful pipeline. So next time we'll pick up actually putting something into that storage account and being able to get to it, and then hooking up to all our back end. But thank you very much for watching, folks. It has been a pleasure as always. Unfortunately, because both Jonathan, Pete, and I do this effectively during the middle of our working day, we've now all got various meetings that we need to go and attend to. I know I definitely do. So we will see you again on the 20th of April for this show. But obviously join Mert on Thursday and Johnny, even not Jonathan, sorry, on Friday. And we'll also have various other things throughout the week as well. So keep your eyes peeled on Twitter, which you can see at the bottom of the screen. But for now, thank you very much from myself and Jonathan and the spiritual Pete. And we'll see you again next time.
Cheers.